Sport Fishing on the Fly is brought to you by Togen's Fly Shop, Maui Jim Sunglasses, and Hardy Rods and Reels.
G'day folks, welcome back to On the Bench. Today I'm going to tie you up a pattern of mine called the G.I.M.P. The G.I.M.P stands for good in most places, and it certainly is. A very good stillwater pattern. It's also worked for coho and cutthroat in the past. Make sure you have these materials ready before you tie the fly. For hook I'm using a Togen's Curve Nymph hook size 10, 2X. For bead I'll be using a 1/8 gold tungsten bead. For thread I'm using 8/0 black classic wax by Semperfli. For the body I'm using Sparkle Peacock Chenille. And for the tail and hackle I'm using Pheasant tail in natural. So just go ahead and start your thread on the hook. The original G.I.M.P fly was done on a straight shank, but I prefer my like Nymph type flies on the curved Nymph hook sometimes. So I'm trying it out. I think it looks a lot better actually on the curved Nymph hook. Just take your thread down to the point where the barb would be. Next, take your pheasant tail and just pull away about, maybe 8 fibers straight off the stem. It's not a very long tail, only about half the size of the actual body. Just tie that in. It might even be a bit too long. I'm just going to shorten it a little bit. That's better. And then you can just take your thread and wind it right up to the bead. Snip away the excess. And now I'm just going to take, I'm actually using 12/0. I recommend 8/0 or 6/0 thread. I just didn't have any, so I have to put a few extra wraps in, and I recommend just putting a couple extra wraps here at the head of the fly. It just helps the collar and the hackle go on nicer. I'm just going to tie this back a tiny bit more. There we go. Next, take your Peacock Sparkle Chenille. This is what the original fly was done with, the fly body. I've also tied a couple with Straggle, Semperfli Straggle, to see how they work, but I haven't tested them out yet. So I'm just going with the original pattern. Just tie that in. I just took and pulled a little bit from the end, so I had a little piece of string to tie in on. Bring your thread back up. Next you can just take your body and wind it up the hook in touching turns. When you get to the bead, you just want to make sure that you snug it right up into that bead. Otherwise it leaves a gigantic space for the collar, and it could come out a lot bigger than what you want. It's a very prominent collar, but it can easily get away from you on this fly. So I just tied that in really well. And I'm going to take another few extra wraps at the front here and just make sure that I can see the little thread base. Next, take your pheasant tail. And this fly was actually designed by Deb Paskall, and he likes to use the feathers at the base of a pheasant tail feather, the little wispier feathers. So if you have those available, if not, just use the regular ones, that's totally fine. I'm just going to pull off about around 6 or so. A few too many, not too many. And I'm just going to bring them back about right on top and just past where the body ends. Just put a couple wraps in. I might even have it just a little bit too long. I'm just going to shorten it up a little bit. I like it to just come back just past there. And next, take the same amount And you're going to tie it in on the side. And lastly, same amount again on the other side. Now the best retrieve to use for this fly is, because it has a tungsten bead, it sinks fast, right? So you want to sink it, strip it twice, very fast, about 1 to 2 foot pulls, like strip, and then give it a good pause, like 3 to 5 second pause, and then another couple strips, and that's how you fish this fly. That's what we found the best retrieve is for this, because it just, as it starts falling again on the pause, and then you go to strip it again as it starts coming up through the water, that's usually when the fish will hit this fly. Oh, so next I like to just take and put a couple of wraps just in front of this pheasant before I snip it off. Just take some good sharp scissors and get in there as close as you can. Snip those off. I'm just going to flatten my thread a tiny bit, and then you just want to build a little black collar. Actually, the first time we fished this fly was at Island Lake, and it was not done, the hackle wasn't done this way. It was actually the white mallard. I think it was white mallard hackle that we used, and it worked really, really well. And then started using this fly more often, and it became one of our Trojan Pond winning flies when we used to compete in the Trojan Pond tournament every year. And yeah, it's worked at lots of lakes. Like I said in the beginning, it's worked for coho and cutthroat as well. Just give it a couple whip finishes. Pull that good and tight. And next you can take some UV resin or head cement or anything you have handy, and just give that collar a little bit of glue or resin. And that's it. The G.I.M.P fly, G.I.M.P. Thank you for joining me on this edition of On the Bench. Take care, everyone. Conserve the waters and tight lines.